recording this, or are you gonna do you want me to dance to something? Oh, you're recording?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, okay, all right. I won't pick my nose or anything. I'll just do this straight. My name is John Stalker. I mean, most of you are here because you either read my biography or know who I am. I've been in the animation industry now for. Hello.
Ignore me. I'm looking for a marker.
A marker?
Like a dry erase marker.
You know what? I think I saw one on a table in the adjacent room. Not adjacent, the next door room.
Think?
I think I did. I got
Cool.
Anyway, I don't need any competition. I've been in the business for I think it's just over 45 years now. Long time, and kind of I was very, very fortunate because I kind of got into the game when animation sort of had another resurgence. There were Looney Tunes and there was the Disney stuff, and then in the 80s, animation started to kind of rear its head everywhere. It was still pre-anime. There still had been nothing over here that was in any way anime related, but animation was starting to come around both in Los Angeles and in Toronto. I don't know how many of you know that Toronto is certainly as big animation-wise as Los Angeles is, and it's mammoth. Half the stuff you see, other than the major movies, we don't do major animated movies in Toronto, but series work. There are probably right now 25 animated series being done in Toronto right now. So if any of you are interested in actually becoming voice actors in any way, shape, or form, it's a lot closer than LA, and there's no time difference, and you can come home for weekends. So that's the place where you would want to go. Now, I don't really have a story to tell you. I mean, I do have what I've done, and that may be interesting or it may not be. So why don't I can answer questions about animation in general. I can answer questions about myself. I don't know if you know that I go back to Care Bears, which is now in its third generation, I'm proud to say. And I was the voice of Beastly in Care Bears, and that was around the time when I was really getting my start. That and there were two animated series that were based on the original Star Wars movies, one called Droids and one called Ewoks, and I was in both of those. And I can talk to you about sort of my experience with them and how the whole casting and production elements have changed. I can talk about myself. I was the primary voice director for Sailor Moon. I can talk about that. I can talk about what's happening today. Why don't I just let you guys ask me questions, and when you run out, I'll see if I can fill in some gaps. And if I can't do that, I'll make stuff up. Sure.
Okay, so when you were doing Sailor Moon Super Ass and Sailor Moon Ass season
Yes.
3, season 4, what was it like? The season 5.
Yes.
Like, what
The
was
infamous season 5.
5 that never took place and got dubbed?
Okay, do you all know about, are you Sailor Moon aficionados? You know there was no original season 5. And it was for one very, very specific reason. Because of, hi, how are you? Good, thank you.
It was Toei
Welcome.
censorship.
It was absolutely because there was the lesbian element. There's nothing else. I mean, you can say it was a production company, but it was the production company ultimately said no. Toei said no because nobody wanted to take that risk. Today it would be nothing.
Yeah, no.
Today,
Well, because
you can, you can turn on mainstream television and and watch sitcoms that that have obviously gay people, admittedly gay people. And they're funny, and we accept it now. And sure, we laugh at the fact that they're, that they're gay because they bring a certain element. But it's also the fact that they're just there. They're part of everyday life. Modern Family, for example, funny It's one of the funny,
Yeah.
I think one of the funnier sitcoms on air. And if you go back to Will and Grace, well, Jack was overtly gay in that, and so today, as I say, it would be accepted. I mean,
Yeah.
trust me, in 1993 there were no pride parades, right? It was still something that was kept very, very well hidden. Nobody came out. It was taboo. I only know, I mean, in my experience, even with anybody who was not straight, if you will, was because I was in the entertainment industry, and they flocked to the entertainment industry. I used to do a lot of on-camera work, and boy, all the wardrobe guys were gay, and there were makeup guys who were gay, and none of them admitted it. You knew they were, but they didn't admit it.
Yeah.
Right, but the sort of the whole thing came tumbling down when they all started dying at 40. And what's going on here? And it was when AIDS became reared its ugly head and started, of course, first claiming gays.
Yeah.
Right. So that was why
They didn't.
you did not see season 5. You will see it, as far as I know.
Viz, yeah.
The new production is going to include a season 5, but they're getting there. I think they've just finished 3. Have they not just finished?
I think
the third
so.
season now?
I think they just did the movie too.
The remake, Crystal, and I think it's great. I think it's really, really great. I mean, we didn't know. I mean, we were told, oh, they're kissing cousins. Oh, they're no.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
one's
it's
really
the-
a sort of a feminine-looking boy, right? When they kissed, there were all kinds of stuff. We went, okay. We didn't know a lot about it. We didn't see a lot of this stuff. You have to understand that when we did Sailor Moon, when we recorded Sailor Moon, it was like we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We didn't know. We never saw a full episode. We didn't record it sequentially. It was bits and pieces, and whenever we could get a performer in that she would do or he would do a whole bunch of stuff, but a little bit from this episode, a little bit from that, and then they'd pick up this, and then that got changed, and so we'd redo that, and then I might not work with them again for 2 weeks, and they'd come in and fill in some of the gaps, and then suddenly you'd have 3 of them in the studio together doing stuff. We had no idea what any of those stories were. Nothing. And I'll tell you right now, if anybody tells you they knew, they're lying to you. We had no idea. We had no idea that it was going to be what it is today. It was so different, so weird, and so unusual. We looked at this and went, the hell is this stuff? We'd never even seen cartoon characters that were drawn that way. The big eyes, that whole, that we used to call Japanimation before
Came anime.
it became sort of part of the lexicon, and it was called anime. There was no anime. The word, if it existed, it certainly wasn't used to any extent. The recording was weird.
Wow.
Not done. Today, of course, it's computerized.
Yeah.
Back then, it was. I mean, unless you're really interested in the technical production, I can go into it, but you may start yawning. You may not. I don't know. It's interesting. It's very complex.
Oh, yeah, it's
called
definitely
Rhythmo
interesting.
Band. Have any of you ever heard of the name Rhythmo Band? That was the original. That was how Sailor Moon was originally dubbed. I want to tell you about it because you're all looking like that says, yeah, I could listen to that. So you're going to now, and just if you don't like it, throw stuff. That'll be an indication that I should stop. Rhythmo Band. We would get a picture, and we would get, and it was a cellulose. It was it ran on a screen, and underneath there was a band where the dialogue was handwritten, and it was written in kind of a weird script. Say the word hello. If someone walked in, hello. Well, it would be HELL and then O, or an O with a line and then another row. So you knew you would carry that sound through. And there was a bar, and as the words went by, you had to be reading exactly what was just touching the bar to make it match the lips. It was a very, very difficult process, which is why when you watch the original, you'll see there's little bits that are off. Of course, it's off anyway because we're dubbing Japanese. But some of it, you'll actually see, they'll talk like this, and then they'll stop, and then the mouth will keep going, and then the dialogue will keep going. The mouth is closed, or the mouth will go, right? We would have to add words sometimes. Like add a you see at the end, or something colloquially that would take up that you see, if the mouth went like that at the end. So this rhythm band was all handwritten, and it went through a process of they had guys or girls called detectors, and they would find out when they would have to mark down in a numbering system where the mouth opened and where it closed. And then there were, of course, the people, the translators, who translated directly from Japanese to English. And then you had the writers who would take the English, because it might be very, very long, it might be very, very short, because the translators were just doing a straight translation, not matching lips. And then they would have to take it and figure out, and they knew what sounds, like if I did I don't know, I can't put a D. So I'm going, but that could also be E. It could also be F. See, because the mouth opens the same way. So they knew that it could construct dialogue in different ways, because the lips weren't necessarily making the sound that they originally made. You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because our lips form for many of the same letters and sounds the same way, but we say them differently. And of course, you haven't got the fine movements of the lips that you have in real life, or that animation has today, which is really, really wonderful. You have every little lip nuance, right? It's perfect. It's perfect today. But then this was like caveman style, honest to God. It was like chipping away at a rock. Honest to God, it was that primitive. But fun, crazy, and again, we had no idea. We would, when I first started, I came in to do odd voices. That was my first, right from the very beginning. I don't even know if they gave me credit for it. The producer, I probably do have credits, because I don't generally look at credits. I just knew who the main people were, and I worked with all of them anyway, and I could probably tell who they were, right? And stuff that I don't work on, I'll look at the credits. But stuff that I have worked on, I tend not to. It's just me. But so I don't look for my own credits, although I get credits on IMDb. Oh, I did that. Oh, that's great. Trust me, when you get older, you have to look and say, "Oh my God, I did that." And so I would come in and do like a pizza delivery guy, or some voice from the theater somewhere. And I'd be a little guy that came in and, "Oh, your so and so is ready." I would do all kinds of weird little stuff, and then I did the voice of this guy here, Grandpa Hino, who is do you know Grandpa Hino? Ray's grandfather.
Yeah.
The pervert. Yeah. Hey, what can you do? It's a living. And I did him, and it was an interesting story, and Roland will back me up, that I don't even know why. The producer was kind of flighty, I should say. She's a great gal, but she had her issues, and I don't talk bad about anybody if I can possibly avoid it. It's just not right? But she was just flighty and a little strange. We'll tell you maybe some gentle stories tomorrow when we're together. But he was relieved of his duties, and she turned to me and said, "Do you want to be the new voice director?" Awkward position, right? Because I knew Roland, and I worked for him, and he was a voice performer as well, and other things, and Roland used to do a a lot of music productions. He had a company called Wizard Productions, and I did a ton of voice work for his company. He's a really brilliant music guy as well. A lot of people don't know that. Anyway, I happened to be in the studio, and she said, "Do you want to be the voice director?" And I said, "Ooh, boy, I don't know. I've never voice directed before. Do I have, can you give me some time to think about this?" "No." "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll be making a decision shortly." And I decided, in that moment I said, shortly after, I said, "Yeah, I'll try this." And I thought, what have I got to lose? Well, I did have something to lose. Actually, I lost income because she didn't pay really well. And I was a very, very, very busy voice guy at the time. I was doing 3, 4, 5 jobs a day, regularly. And I had to spend an entire day there for less than I would make on one job. But ultimately, it's paid off because I learned a lot from her. Specifically, if you ever look at my scripts, my directing scripts now, they're all color coordinated and color coded. And I learned that from her. Right, and it was really great. I mean, I'm fanatic. I go as far as, well, this show. This is all red paper clips and red, whatever. And I know that if I see, it's wonderful. I see something with a little red tab on it. Oh, that belongs to that show. It's misfiled. I don't even have to look at it, right? So she's helped me immensely. And there came a time, and it does in almost every performer's life, when you hit those lulls. And it's like, I was really happy I had this little job that, of course, I thought, oh God, I gotta do this again. That was kind of how I felt about it. It was tough. And especially it's tough. As a performer, you like to become involved in what you're doing. It's like anything else. Why do anything if you can't do it with a sense of emotional involvement, right? And it was very difficult because, like I say, it was piecemeal. I got to see my friends and work with them, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Sometimes I wouldn't get a script till I got there. I had no idea what are they talking about? A villain would come in and was she the thing? And oh yeah, we're using her for another character. Oh no, or she would change roles. So and so, she wasn't available this week, so she's doing that voice. You can't use another person to use it for the same. If you listen, you will hear sometimes 2 different voices. I'm not the only grandpa, David Fraser is the other day grandpa, It's all through the series. You'll find different people. She tried to get you to sound alike. And of course, through the magic of even older technology, you can still play around and make things and adjust and manipulate sound, right? So, but that's what she would do. So it was difficult to do, but again, as I say, I do probably more voice directing now than actual acting, because acting these days is a very young game, very young. And voice directing doesn't seem to have those same parameters. There are a lot of older voice directors. It's funny because I was working on a show, and the producer said, this is one of the indications. Oh, I said, you got a doctor here, he's got 4 lines. Do you have anybody? She said, oh no, just to pick who you know who can do this and bring him in, I trust you. I said, well, I hadn't seen pictures or anything. I said, well, how old is the character? She said, oh, he's an older guy. Now this is a 23-year-old producer talking. He's an older guy, 40, 45. But that's where the industry is right now. Even the other part of my voice life is commercial work and narration, and I'm only going to tell you this one thing about it. If you're 22 to 38, you can work. If you've got a good voice and you know how to deliver commercial copy, you can work. You got to get lucky too. But over 38, 40, there's a million guys out there who aren't working, and gals too. So, all that from when's the 5th? Why didn't we do the 5th season? Wow. See, got a talker here. Somebody, I now again, I can answer other stuff. Let's see if somebody else.
Well,
has a question first.
I didn't know if you want to ask the other people, or you want if I could follow up on that?
Follow up on it? You want me to talk for another 20 minutes about anything but that, right? Okay.
Okay, because you said that you guys didn't know any of the stuff that was going on with the
Right.
scripts and stuff like that.
Right.
Because it's interesting because the fourth and the third season, that's when Sailor Uranus and Sailor Neptune were brought in,
Right.
and that's, they were called cousins, which
Right.
we all know
Kissing cousins.
they were they were lovers, but
They were?
like,
Oh, just
yeah,
kidding. Okay.
yeah, they were lovers, but they were called cousins in the
Right,
original
of
dub.
course,
So
yeah.
that was like no one knew who
Well,
decided that, or
you know what? It wasn't an issue. It was like we thought, oh, okay, that's what they told us they were. No one said. By the way, we're next week. We're starting the next episode. We've got 2 new Sailor Scouts coming in, and they're lesbians. It's like that. It didn't happen that way.
No.
Just you know from watching Sailor Moon, there were new characters in all the time.
Yeah.
You didn't know whether a character was going to come in and be in for 1 episode, 2 episodes, or 15.
Yeah.
We had no idea.
yeah, wow.
Yeah, there were no storylines. Often, when I direct traditional animation now, there'll be some kind of storyline. Here's this guy, and there's this girl, and there's this the goofy partner, and the 3 of them do this, and they're adventurous, and they go and they're after this treasure, and and these are these adventures, and they meet these kind of obstacles. So there's an arc, right? Okay. So you get an idea of how the characters should perform, and then every week you would get a little synopsis. This week, Bill does this, and Sally does that, and Joe does this, and they meet a thing, and they all get, eaten by wolves, and and so you had an idea of what the story was. None of that existed with Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
But we know that they're called log lines often, and it says this in this episode, this happens, beginning, middle, end. No details really, but you would know at least what's going to happen. Not with Sailor Moon. It was all sort of out in the old. It was a blank canvas. I can't even tell you enough. I mean, most people think that we had a lot of information. We didn't. It's why even reading, they would pick up things in the middle, and a character would read, and again we would use the rhythm of band. You listen to a wonderful explanation of how Sailor Moon was recorded, and I'm not going over it again.
We'll be on YouTube, so.
But you'll have to talk to that.
We'll be on YouTube,
but
so.
You would see, say it's yeah, and the performer would be reading it. She'd come up, there'd be a couple of lines, they'd be picking up this scene, and she'd go, yeah! And I'd stop because it's, yeah. So you had no idea of the attitude even. So he's going, no, it's not a yelled yeah, right? It's or whoa. Could you go, whoa? No, it's whoa! We had no idea. The performers had no idea. I'd be seeing lines for the first time. Guessing at half of it. So of course, if we made a mistake, we would simply pick it up the next session when that performer was in again. Questions about other parts of animation other than Sailor Moon or Sailor Moon questions?
I was just curious, is that peculiar to Sailor Moon where you just don't know what's happening?
No.
Or is that
Yeah. I mean, generally, it was now you're given a lot more information.
Yeah.
A lot more. Like I say, we have a story. I mean, stuff would come from Japan, and remember there was no MP3s and no emailing and no. It came over, hard copy came over. A video got flown in from Japan, right? And you might get 2 of them or 3 of them, and you might get different writers who are working on the translators working on different episodes. So you might get, okay, here's episode 19, 23, and 24. And then you'd get 32, 40, and 56. because different writers working at different bases, they're assigned their stuff. It wasn't one person working through it chronologically, right? So we were, we'd get it, and sometimes I remember our producer. I told you she was very, very nervous and very flighty. I think she was worried about keeping her job because it was just the way it was. Anyway, she would be pacing back and forth and pacing. Oh my God, oh my God, I'm like, come on, you're gonna have a coronary here, right? I'd say to her, Nicole, just like, it's going to be deliberate. You can't make them get here any faster. All of this is, you're going to make yourself really sick. And she was, in fact, a sick woman. She had all kinds of stuff wrong. And I'm a firm believer that a huge part of it came from her sort of emotional instability and the fact that she was frantic all the time. I mean, obviously, we know now how much emotionally we can affect our body, and you can heal, how incredibly powerful our minds are in terms of healing and everything else. So I would say, what is there anything else we can do? Maybe let's just sit down and, we had a little trouble with that session with the, so-and-so was in before. Why don't we sit down with the engineer and do a little editing and make that fit a little better now and fill the time in, right? Right, and then she'd be worried because someone was due to come in, and of course, she was going to have to pay them, and her company had sort of had the production rights, so that if we went overtime, they paid. It wasn't TOEI, or at the end, was it Cloverfield?
Talking about the dubbing company?
Yeah,
Think
Cloverfield was the one that did a lot of the work at the end, and had the production.
Yeah, they were the ones that did 3 and 4.
Yeah.
Deke did the first 2.
Okay. See, I told you. What are you gonna do? Anyway, they wouldn't have to pay if you went overtime. It was the production company's responsibility, not the owners of the product. So she would freak out about going overtime, and I'd say, well, what are you gonna do? And she would call and try to cancel people and change it. Right? It was kind of a mess sometimes. I'm really amazed that it turned out the way it did. There are projects I work on now that I think, this is so beautiful, this is wonderful, and everything fits, and it's nice, and great cast, and no frantic people, and they last a season, right? There's just it's really hard to gauge. And again, I'll go back to saying what I said, that nobody could imagine that Sailor Moon would be what it is today, 25 years later. And I would say it's probably, if you took every anime, it's probably still the most popular anime. You've gotten a lot more, there's a huge volume, and it's all segmented and split, and a lot of people have, this is my favorite, that's my favorite, but I would say that it's got to be in every anime aficionado's top 3 or 4, and number 1 for probably 35%. Gotta be, at least. And how it did that? No idea. No damned idea. If I knew, I'd be doing, like Sailor Sun. Any other questions? Doesn't have to be Sailor Moon. It can be anything about animation, or if you know anything about my phenomenal career, you can ask me about that too. Yes?
What's your favorite that you've worked on so far? Out of
Favorite?
everything.
I can tell you the favorite voice of it.
Yes.
Beastly. Beastly's still my favorite. There's, because he was just so sweet. I always say that the best kind of character to portray in animation is the bad guy's sidekick. Because the bad guy's sidekick is always a good guy, right? It's true, in sort of traditional animation, he's never like this. You got the evil guy. Go and do this. Okay, I'll do it. I want to do this, right? He's always got a good heart, right? And they always get lambasted. It's very formulaic. But Beastly had a very sweet way about him, and I'm sort of close to him too because I helped create the character. And though really back in those days, we're talking mid '80s, we had performers had a lot more say. Now, when they have people in for an audition, it isn't they want something so specific. Rarely do they look sort of outside the box. They know what they want when you come in. Sure, that's not to say that someone can't present something in an audition that they go, whoa, now that's really interesting. Sometimes they say that and still don't use the person because it just doesn't fit with the rest of the characters that they've envisioned. A lot of people who are performers say, geez, you did a great audition, and you may have done the best audition. But if you don't fit with the other characters in terms of the whole production, you don't get the job, right? No matter how good you are. But when I created Beastly, I came in and the producer said, I got this character. And he showed me a mock-up of Beastly. And it was like, well, that's a pretty weird-looking guy, right? And he said, what do you got? And we went through a whole bunch of stuff. And then, I'll mention a name that you ladies may remember, but the rest of you won't. There was a comedian many years ago that, well, he had his own show, and before that, he was on a sitcom, one of the early sitcoms called The Honeymooners, and his name was Jackie Gleason. And Jackie Gleason used to come out and do a monologue, as a lot of the comedy shows were. And he would do a lot of sketch work and stuff in the show. But he would come out and do his initial monologue, and then he would cue his own orchestra, and he would go, and away we go! And that was his signature line. And so I took, as most performers do, and when I do a lot of teaching, and I encourage new performers to steal, because it's never going to sound the same. You could steal an identical voice pretty much, you know, give it a little bit of a twist or a little bit of a something, and you got a new character. There's nothing new under the sun. Nothing at all. I mean, even like you look at the iconic one thing, Homer Simpson, somebody's done similar stuff to that before. A stupid guy, right? But he added a little twist to it, and he came up with Homer Simpson. I mean, Homer Simpson's actually gone through, if you look at the history, 5 different voices, till they came up with the one that is the one you've heard for the last 20 years. But the first few years, it's different. It's same character, same actor, different voice. It's interesting. Google the old one, the original Simpsons. It's like it's really quite weird to see what we expect to, but not to hear it. Anyway, I took that voice that was like that, and I pinched it up higher, and I did that, and I gave him that voice. He went, "That's it, that's the voice. Let's go." Here, and here's the script, and go outside, look it over, and we did Care Bear. It became iconic. Care Bear's character, and the fact that I helped create it, I'm very proud of it, and it's ego. But but if you're an actor, you've got to have a little bit of ego, because I'll tell you, sometimes it takes you through some of the rough times when you can feel good about yourself, because it's the first thing that gets crushed if you don't do well. So you got to pump it up and be strong. And sometimes, even when I find people that are really egotistically offensive, I try to understand. Like you look at a lot of the Hollywood people, and I know they're probably the ones that have the weakest sense of self-esteem. They're the ones that portray the big egos. They have to. Because you're always in the spotlight. You're always on. You can't say, I'm not coming in today. You're coming in, and you got to leave all that big bag of poo-poo outside the door. If your dog's sick, or you just had a car accident, or your mom's in the hospital, or your kid just broke his leg, or you had a beef with your boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever. Doesn't matter. You got to leave that outside. Hey, I'm ready to go. That's what you have to do. See, there's no delaying. right? I mean, I'm as a voice director. I had a friend of mine who died a few days ago, and I missed his funeral because I had a voice directing gig, and I had to go. I can't substitute a voice director. So, what do you do? He was an actor, so he would have understood. But you pump yourself up. Yeah, I'm sad. He was a well-known actor too, a nice guy. He did a show called Cagney and Lacey, and he was on Meatballs. Anybody seen Meatballs? The movie Meatballs? Very stupid. Anybody else? Question? Let me just give everybody else a shot before we get into question number 3. Anybody? The floor is yours.
Okay. So when they were doing the for Sailor Moon, when they did the first 2 seasons, and then they went over to the 3 and 4, a lot of the voices changed. Not all of them, but some of them, a lot of them did. And then of course the replacement Deke score, I believe it was, changed as well from 3 and 4. Like, what was the decisions, except for of course the theme song that stayed? What were like the changes?
The changes in availability.
Availability.
Performers' availability. And
Because I think
if
Terry
you disagreed with the producer, you could be fired. I mean, right from the very beginning. The first Sailor Moon, who was also the first voice director, was Tracy Moore. And Tracy did, I think, 13 or 17 episodes.
She left.
And she actually had, I'm going to give her all the props in the world, the best concept of what Sailor Moon was all about. If you talk to her today, she's a bit of a whack job, but she's got a good heart, and she still understands the astrological aspects of it, and she had, I think, the best handle on the scouts' personalities and their whims, their foibles, right. And she had all kinds of levels, and you can even talk to her now. She'll mention the original Japanese intent for a lot of the characters, and my mouth hangs open when she talks, and she's like fluent in this. It just pours out of her. And I'm really in awe of the fact that she, even though, I directed way more, I was doing, and I must tell you, a lot of it was very superficial because I didn't know. You come in the middle of something too, you just like, suddenly you're in the chair and there's no time, there was no learning curve. Remember that up until the point I became the voice director, I was just an occasional performer, whether I was doing Grandpa Hino or whether I was the doctor in one episode, or or a talking chair, or whatever I was, right? And suddenly I'm walking into like, okay, I didn't have time to start thinking about motivation and layers and levels and all. Just didn't, right? And so if you ever get a chance to see her, she's kooky, she really is, and you kind of have to pin her down a little bit. I did a couple of concerts. I did, I think I did Minneapolis, and I did Vancouver with her, and Anime North. I did an Anime North together. She's really interesting to talk to, or to listen to. If you could sort of strain out some of the stuff and talk about how Sailor Moon grew to what she was, and how the transition from the Japanese, from the manga, into the English, that whole transitionary period, she's the gal.
Wow.
I hate having to tell anybody that anybody's better than I am. No, she was just different. When I took over, it was business. There really wasn't even time for the other. And that's a strength of mine. Is that I can sort of pick up the elements, put them together quickly, and say, okay, here's our focus. Let's get this done.
So now would that be why they for 3 and 4 they didn't use the Sailor Moon soundtrack or the English soundtrack? Or?
For 3 and 4, they didn't use the English sound.
Yeah, there were replacement scores.
What's her name?
Season 2.
Sihi. What's her name?
Season 1 and
Singer?
Season 2 had replacement scores, and
Right.
then they didn't
Yeah,
use
no,
them.
I have no idea.
No,
We
okay.
weren't even a part of that. We didn't hear the music. All we heard was that was the only song we knew.
Well, that and
Right?
the
Because it was
theme
stuck on
song.
everything. Right? But
Well, they still had the English theme song though.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
and I've done a number of cons with the girl who was the singer for all of that stuff, the English singer.
Yeah.
She does a number of cons. She's pretty busy. Jennifer Sihi, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so like with the voice actors that were changed when 3 came on was like Sailor
Well,
Moon.
the voice actors
Ter-
change was, like I say, sometimes availability.
Yeah.
Or like
Terry,
when
'cause I believe-
Tracy, when Terry had another commitment,
Oh.
right, another acting commitment, and she said, "Can we go on hiatus, and I'll come back and da 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 da." No, we need to keep
Oh,
going.
that's what it
so
was?
Then they hired Terry Hawks, and Terry did seasons, most of 1 and most of 2.
Yeah.
And I don't know if did she start 3?
No,
I
she
think
did
so.
the movies.
Linda-
She did
yeah.
the movies.
And then
Linda took over for 3.
Valentine came on, and that was a whole different approach to Sailor Moon. I found Terry's and Tracy's were similar, and Linda's was very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
It's a little different, yes.
I get that a lot. I know them all, and I can't really, in all honesty, I can't diss my colleagues.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Anybody else? I think we made.
It was, because I think it was Terry
Oh, we got time. Good.
Terry left because of the
She got pregnant.
pregnant. Yes, that was
Yeah.
why. Yeah.
Good reason to leave.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, tell you what, I'm going to put this on hold, and I'm coming to work. Anybody else? I can see you're like doing this.
That why wasn't the Sailor Stars episodes wrong?
Why wasn't?
The Sailor Stars episodes? Why
talked
wasn't
earlier.
Oh, we talked about that.
That was the first question I asked.
Sorry.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it has.
It's the lesbian element.
Is the lesbian?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was transgender thing.
Yeah, and that's not that wasn't accepted back then.
I mean, they got around with it with Uranus, but I
Do
guess
you
they
think
couldn't do it.
They could have gone around about it, like just changing.
Well, they did. They called
did
them
with
cousins. And they said one was just, sort of. They talked about one being, just an effeminate boy.
Yeah, for Uranus and Neptune.
Yes.
But they couldn't complete all of the stars
They-
because the men transformed into women.
Correct. So there was no season 5 because of it. It's going to be done. The new team is going to be doing it, and I'm sure doing a wonderful job of it. And it can be treated. Nobody has to sort of pussyfoot around it anymore. It is what it is. And I think they'll just, if they're smart, and Viz is smart, they'll just deal with it as anything else, right? Business as usual. That's the way to deal with it. But it was just different then. I mean, our whole world has changed in that respect in the last about 20 years, right? It's when it was, when people started to, again, people came out, it wasn't, right? And they were timid at first, and now people are like, oh yeah.
Well, even so far back to the first season, it was there's Zoisite. She was
Zoisite?
Zoisite. She was portrayed as a girl in the dub, but she was actually a man
Right.
in the Japanese version.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. I just
know.
always thought that was interesting when I heard about that. I
Well-
was like, wow. Because I mean, when you look at it, he kind of looks like a girl, so I guess that's how they got around
Yeah.
it. Is like, and just get a girl voice actor, and then that's
I'm
it.
sure that the production company it was Optimum Productions, the name of the company, they were just told what to do. That's all. I don't think it was the actual producer. I think that would have been a very large decision for the production company to make, and Chance being wrong. I think that probably came from like the serious, the big brass. Who
Yeah.
said, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
It would come from Toei, and they would say, this is what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the way it is.
Yep.
It's like any business.
Absolutely.
What was the most difficult voice you ever had to do?
Oh, I can tell you right now, I know exactly what it is. I did a movie years ago. Boy, I dubbed a movie. You've probably never heard of it. I think it's still out there because I do get sort of a smattering and people go, oh, I saw that. And it's not just like, you know, people my age. So it's on occasionally somewhere. And the movie was called Quest for Fire. And it was cavemen discovering, guess what? Fire, right? And my agent called me and said, are you interested in doing this? I said, yeah. She said, you're replacing somebody. I said, okay, which is pretty common. I mean, you know, and I thought, oh, somebody went in, they didn't like them, and they're calling me in. Well, I went in, and I had to do the voice of cavemen. It was just several cavemen, specifically one who was in the actual, that was before, he was, you know, rubbing stuff together to get sparks as flint and metal, or, you know, two young children. I don't know what he was doing. And I had to do like, now that hurts me even now, right? And it's interesting because one of my first instructions when I teach or when I cast, if I'm casting something and somebody does something that's like, I say, does it hurt your voice? No. I said, that at the beginning tells me it does. Well, it's a little tough. I said, don't use it. Don't. For a couple of reasons. I don't want you to get the job and then come in, do it for 10 minutes and start spitting blood. Because then the production company's going to be very angry and you won't work again, right? Or you'll damage your vocal cords and you still won't work again. So this was going against, it was a paycheck at the end of the day. It was a union job, and I did that, and of course, in an hour and a half, I was in huge trouble. And the director, he was French. He said, there is a spray. Just spray your mouth. It will, your throat will be better. So, okay. Yeah. And then I'm back to right, grunting and groaning and hitting and killing animals and stuff. And you know, I would start using it more and more and more often. And after about 6 hours, I couldn't talk. I mean, I really couldn't. And I just, I didn't even look, and I finally looked at the bottle, and it was a Novocaine. So instead of easing my throat, it had just masked the fact that I was hurting, that I was in such pain. And of course, when that finally wore off later that night, I was in real agony. I couldn't talk. I called, and he said, okay, you're good for today. You come back tomorrow 9 o'clock. I said, sorry, no, I'm not at the time. He said, no, you have to come back. You know, I can't do this. This is beyond what you would that anybody should be expected to do. So I don't know what happened in terms of, hello. I don't know what happened in terms of the movie. I know they used some of my stuff. I don't know if another actor came in and did more. I don't know if the first guy that came in, now I know why he left and why he was being replaced, right? And so, if you ever see Quest for Fire, think of me. Like with, you know, tears in my eyes and probably pieces of flesh dangling in my throat. Lovely image, huh? But it was pretty frightening. Pretty frightening when you think, man, this could be it. This could be it. I could have really done permanent damage, and I thank the powers that be that it wasn't the end of my career. I wouldn't be happy year. Anything else? Oh, you're just doing it. I thought you were sort of waving along.
Actually, I do have a question.
Good, okay.
Okay, so when you were talking about how availability when it came to voice actors, would that ever put off production, or would that like throw off your schedule ultimately?
If I mean in general, are you talking about specifically Sailor Moon? Or are you talking about just in general?
In general.
If somebody's not available for a show, well, it depends. Performers can get a little arrogant after they've established themselves as a particular character, and they do command a certain, they're just that there's, I don't know what it is, but they know that you need them, and so, and worse than that, because performers are usually willing to accommodate, the worst ones are the agents. Now I have an agent, and she's a wonderful gal, but I'm sure she'd do the same thing. If I had a job that I was doing regularly, and then something new came up, that if I didn't take that new thing, maybe it's another series, or maybe it's a big pool of commercials for God knows what, right? Well, she would manipulate the other people and say, "Oh, John's actually had this one first." I'm assuming she would, but in general, agents will do that. Or John's sorry, he's unavailable for this, that, and another reason. In order for me to get the new job, because they know that the old people are not going to bump me. I've already done 8 episodes of this character. They're not going to say, "Oh, we'll get somebody new." If I, obviously, in terms of availability, if I contracted, leprosy or something, couldn't go in for a year, they would do it. They often try to get a sound alike. But there are instances where characters have to be replaced. Arthur, the series Arthur, the kid show, there have been, I think, 9 Arthurs, or 10 Arthurs, because 11-year-old boys, well, in 2 years, one day they're talking like this, and the next day they're talking like that. "Hi, I'm ready for the recording." Whoa! Right, and once they drop, that's that's kind of the end of the Arthurism, and Franklin as well. Franklin, there have been like 6 or 8 Franklins. I was Mr. Rooster on Franklin, but I was the second Mr. Rooster. They just decided one day that they weren't going to use the guy they had, and it was a new season, and they cast for Mr. Rooster, and I got it. So, and I'm sure I've lost jobs that way too. That they decided to do something else. They did other Care Bears, but a number of years ago. They redid, I think, 1 season of Care Bears, and they got someone else to do Beastly, and they drew him differently, and they had him speak differently. And I think he bombed out abysmally, and that was a very happy day. And I encourage people to tell me how bad the new series is. So, sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. In the case of Sailor Moon, sometimes if someone couldn't come in, they would just be, somebody else would just do the part. That's all. And sometimes you'll hear a line that doesn't sound quite right. It's because maybe they'll send somebody home, and then it's like, we missed a line. It was on buried somewhere here, or it was crossed off, and we need that line. Well, so-and-so's coming in. We'll get her to do it, rather than recalling the girl who did it, right, and having to pay her another session fee or a recall fee. They would just use somebody that was coming in.
Yeah, I think there was an episode in Sailor Moon where they used the person who voiced Lita, Sailor Jupiter,
Yes.
for Sailor Mars's voice. There was an episode where she wasn't there as the voice, and then they had her do the voice, and then the next episode it was her again the whole way through. I think that did that.
Well, I don't know. I don't remember actually, but it's interesting because Lita, she's the only one of the scouts that did every.
She did every episode.
Jupiter.
Yeah, she was
the others. There were 3 Sailors Moon, and there were you know, a couple of Venuses and
There was 2
couple
Venuses, I
Mars,
think.
Yeah. So, but the only 3 characters I think that remained the same were Luna, Artemis, and Jupiter.
Yeah, Mars. It was just that one episode, I think, where Lita did it for.
Well, no, but Katie Griffin was the second.
Oh, there was another one
Oh, wait a minute.
for Sailor Mars.
Pardon?
Because for Sailor Mars, there was only, I believe, one episode where she didn't do it, but
But there are 2 different performers.
okay. I just wanted to make sure.
2 different performers. One for I think Katie came in. There was like 15 or 20 episodes in or something. I'm pretty sure. I know she did not do them all.
Okay.
That's one of the things when we tour together, Susan is always like, yeah, well, I'm the only one that did them all. I mean, she's obviously joking, but it's like, it's a little, remember that eagle?
Well,
thing
except
I
for
found?
Luna. Except for Luna. So Luna wasn't
That's
Luna.
what I say, Luna, Artemis.
Artemis. Yeah.
But of the Scouts.
Of the Scouts, she's the only one. Yeah.
Questions?
I don't know Lance said her, but.
Is there any quote that resonated with you and any of the characters that you voiced? Like anyone that sticks to your mind most of the time?
Like a quote, like a particular line that I say?
Yeah, particular line. that you
Interesting, I've
remember
never
the
been
most.
asked that question before. I thought I'd fielded them all. Wow. Well, I guess, I mean, I talked about Beastly being my favorite character, and I guess if I had to pick one because most of the people that are my fans, Beastly's their favorite character too, and that's the thing that of all the performances I've done, that's kind of the number one. And so they always ask me, do a Beastly, would you please do a Beastly line, right? Or I've done phone messages, right, for people, and like voicemail stuff, or I've called people on their birthday and done that stuff. And so the line that I always use is, no, yes, heart. I mean, yes, no, heart. I mean, I don't know what I mean. So that was, yeah. So if you, if somebody says do a Beastly line, that's my default position. So the most of the other stuff I forget. That's done a ton of stuff, and it's really hard to remember.
Have you ever been asked while you're doing a character just to start to riff a couple of lines?
Yeah, I usually get dirty. It's an opportunity for my character to go out of character and swear and, do really bad stuff. Yeah, I mean, but you'll find those on we used to call them the Christmas reels, because those are the ones where you'd have the cast and the crew would have the production company would have a Christmas party and invite it, and then they'd play like all the stuff that was the outtakes of it. And you would get those, and you'd get all that riffing and stuff, or just the stuff we thought the microphone was off, but the engineer, those buggers, would always have the sound rolling. They still do it to this day, right? And we'd be doing something, back and forth as characters, right? And whether we'd lapse into other characters, or else we'd do, oh, listen, what if so-and-so was doing this character, and the guy'd be in the room, and we'd do him, right? And we'd totally just destroy it, right? And all this stuff would come out at the parties. It was fun. It was fun. And then the outtakes where you made a mistake or you couldn't get a word, and it always happens in every show. Somebody stumbles over a word, they can't get the word, or they can't say it. Sometimes you have to wind up rewriting it, right? Or somebody will start laughing at something, right? Right? And then everybody starts laughing, and you can't get back on, you gotta call it 15-minute break, and separate them. Right? It's really true. I mean, it's kind of blessed to be in a position where you can do that. It's not like, oh, this liver surgery, let's take 15. performance. You can't do that. But, you know, it's acting. It's fun. I mean, you're supposed to have a good time. And if you're not having a good time, the performance suffers generally. Well, I think my time here is done. I know that there's another panel tonight. I think performance, like a voice actors panel. And if you come to that, I'll probably tell you the same things that you just heard. So, you know, it'll be boring. Come out to that. I think it starts at 8 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, 8 o'clock.
With a couple of my 8 o'clock.
Yep.
With Chris and.
Yep. With
and
Todd.
Okay. So come out and we'll see if we can make you laugh some more and tell you some funny stories and some serious stuff and learn a little bit more about us. And I'm around, so if you have any other questions you want, you can corral me. You know I love to talk. Everybody knows that now. Yeah, have a really wonderful time at the con. I hope I get to talk to all of you more personally. I'm open to talking about virtually anything except my children. Thank you.